So, the Lord be with you and good day po. So, here is my summary of knowledge in government accounting and accounting for non-government organizations. So, in chapter 1, the overview of government accounting. So, the first one is the following are charged with government accounting responsibility, which is Commission on Audit or COA, the Department of Bureau of Management or the DBM, the Bureau of Treasury or the BTR, and other government agency. So what is Commission on Audit? Commission on Audit has the exclusive authority to promulgate accounting and auditing rules and regulations, keeps the general account of the government, supporting vouchers and other documents. And letter C is submits financial reports to the President and Congress. So, for Department of Budget and Management is the Department of Budget and Management is responsible for the formulation and implementation of the national budget with the goal of attaining the nation's socio-economic activities. And last, the Bureau of Treasury is function under the Department of Finance and is the cash custodian of the government. The BTR is authorized to letter A received and keep national funds and management and control the disbursement thereof, and maintain accounts of financial transaction of all national government offices, agencies, and instrumentalities. So, yan, and other government agencies. So, next slide is yung Government Accounting Manual. Government Accounting Manual for National Government Agency, or also stands for GOM for NGAs. So, what is GOM for NGAs? GOM for NGAs, an old government accounting systems had been used for about 5 decades before it was replaced by the new government accounting, or the NGAs, in 2002. However, on January 1, 2016, the NGAs was replaced by the Government Accounting Manual for National Government Agencies. So, it is promulgated primarily to harmonize the government accounting standards with international accounting standards, particularly the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, or the IPSAS. The IPSAS are based on the International Financing Report Standards, or the IFRS. Next is what is the basic principles. First is Philippine Public Sector Accounting Standards, or the PPSAS, accrual basis of accounting, budget basis, revised chart of accountants, double entry bookkeeping, financial statement based on accounting and budgetary records, fund cluster accounting. So for qualitative characteristic, it contains understandability, relevance, materiality, reliability, faithful representation, substance over form, neutrality, prudence, completeness, and comparability. So, last is an item is recognized as asset if all of the following criteria are met. So, first is the item meets the definition of an asset. Number 2, probable inflow of future economic benefits. And number 3, reliable measurement of cost or other value. So, next is chapter 2. So, for chapter 2, the title of chapter 2 is the budget process. So, first one is I learned the budget cycle. So, first one is the budget preparation, budget legislation, budget execution, budget accountability. Next is the bottom up. So, dito is from lowest to highest level lang naman. So, madali lang tandaan. So, yung zero-based naman is without regard to the previous year's budget. So, next is the appropriation and allotment. So, in appropriation is the authorization made by a legislative body to allocate funds for purposes specified by the legislative or similar authority. So, sa allotment, ito yung authorization issued by the DBM to government agency. So, next is the obligation. Act of duly authorized official which binds the government to the immediate or eventual payment of sum of money. So, next is the chapter 3. In Chapter 3, the government accounting process. So, next, learn the government entities book of accounts. Registries consists of journals, ledgers, and registries. So, familiar naman tayo doon. So, next is the classification of expenditure. First is personal services, maintenance and other operating expenses, financial expenses, and capital outlays. Next is, ito yung mga RAPAL, RAOD, ORS, tsaka notice of cash allocation. So, to continue the chapter 4 summary, revenues, and other receipt. So, ito lang yung mga nature of receipt. Ito lang yung natandaan ko yung sale of good, rendering services, interest, royalties, and etc. So, yun lang yung sa chapter 4. And sa chapter 5 naman is yung sa disbursement. So, the disbursement authorities, it includes NCA, NTA, TRA, NCAA, and CDC. So, all disbursement require the following certification. A is availability of allotment, B, availability of funds and completeness of supporting documents, and C, necessity and legality of disbursement. So, ano ba yung mga modes of disbursement? Pwedeng check, cash, or cashless payments. Under this is ADA, EMDS, credit card, NCAA, and TRA. So, chapter 6 is the financial asset. So, ang in-include ko lang dito is yung meaning ng financial asset. Cash or right to receive cash or other financial asset and equity instrument of another entity or contractual right to exchange financial instrument under potentially favorable conditions. So, ito lang yung petty cash fund. Petty cash fund maintained using the interest system. So, yan, familiar naman tayo dun sa petty cash fund. So, continue the chapter 7, the inventory. So, ang include ko lang dito yung mga inventory held for sale, for distribution, for manufacturing, for consumption, and semi-expendable property. Sinasabi din dito na goods held for sale are subsequently measured at the lower of cost and NRV, while goods held for distribution are subsequently measured at the lower cost of and current replacement cost. So, next is the agriculture, all chapter 8. So, biological asset, ano ba yun? Ito yung, ano ba yung mga biological asset? Yun yung may mga living animal or plant. It is initially and subsequently measured at fair value less cost to sell. So, ano naman yung agricultural procedure? Is the harvested product of the entity's biological asset. So, it is initially measured at fair value less cost to sale at the point of harvest. So, chapter 9 is the summary, the investment property. So, in investment property, it is a land or building held for rentals or capital appreciation. It is initially measured at cost and subsequently measured at cost less accumulated depreciation and impairment loss. So, yun lang sa investment property. Kasi, the investment itself, the investment term itself, para maisip natin yung concept and kung ano yung include doon. So, next is chapter 10, the property, plant, and equipment or the PPE. So, medyo mahaba to. So, papasadahan ko na lang. So, ang threshold ng PPE is 15,000. So, ang PPE is initially measured at cost. So, ito yung mga promotional items at saka yung acquisition by construction. So, yung acquisition by construction through construction contract, cost is contract price, and by administration, cost is sum of DMDL and OH. So, ito naman yung sa acquisition through exchange and acquisition through non-exchange. So, in-include ko lang dito. So, ayan, babasahin na lang. So, acquisition through interagency or interagency transfer, repairs and maintenance, and replacement cost. So, yun lang naman yun. So, ito din yung mga naka-indicate lang. Ito naman, computation of value in use or VIU. Depreciated replacement cost approach, restoration cost approach, service unit approach. So, naka-indicate lang din dyan yung mga formula ng VIU. Ito naman yung heritage asset. Parang infrastructure asset, reforestation projects, idle PPE, fully depreciated, and unserviceable property, and lost PPE. So, ito naman yung borrowing cost by NG expense the benchmark treatment. NGA is capitalized if related to the acquisition of a qualifying asset or the allowed alternative treatment. So, next is the Chapter 11 or the intangible asset. Next, what is intangible asset? It is identifiable non-monetary monetary asset without physical substance. So, yan, pag intangible asset naman, alam natin na wala talaga itong physical substance. Ito yung mga, loans, and yan, mga ganun. Ito ay initial measured cost. So, ang internal generation is research costs recognized as expense, development costs capitalized only if all of the conditions listed in the GOM for NGAs are met. So, subsequent measurement is pag indefinite life not amortized but tested for impairment at least annually. So, pag finite life, amortized using the straight line method over a period of 2 to 10 years, the residual value is assumed to be zero except when the entity has the ability to sell the asset at the end of its useful life. So, yun lang naman yung chapter 11. So, sa chapter 12 is liabilities. Liability recognized only when all of the following are met. Ano ba yung mga yun? First one is the item meets the definition of liability. Number 2, it is probable that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits will be required to settle the obligation. And number 3, the obligation has a cost or value. Example is the fair value that can be measured reliably. So, in-indicate ko lang dito yung financial liabilities are initially measured at fair value minus transaction cost, and it is subsequently measured at amortized cost. So, ito lang yung provision. Provision is liability of uncertain timing or amount. Contingent liability and contingent asset. So, next is the chapter 13 or the leases. Any of the following will lead to a finance lease classification if transfer of ownership, bargain purchase option, the lease term is for the major part of the economic life of the asset, the PB of the lease payments is at least substantially of all the fair value of the lease asset, and number 5, the lease asset is specialized nature. So, the inception of the lease, commencement of the lease term. So, yun lang naman yung 13. So, 14, chapter 14, the financial statement. The following are recognized directly in equity, rather than through surplus or deficit. Correction of prior period errors, effect of changes in accounting policies, and gain or losses on remeasuring available for sale financial asset. So, adjusting entries are those provided evidence of condition that existed at the reporting date. So, yun, familiar naman tayo dun. A change in accounting policy is accounted for using the following order of priority. Number 1, transitional provision, retrospective application, and prospective application. So, chapter 15, the miscellaneous topic. So, ito naman yung under a service concession arrangement, a private entity or the operator uses the service concession asset to provide a public service on behalf of the government or the guarantor in exchange for compensation, which is letter A, payment in cash, or B, grant of right to collect fees from users of the asset or right to access another revenue gathering asset, or letter C, a combination of A and B. So, the 3 forms of joint ventures under GAM for NGAs are jointly controlled operation, jointly controlled asset, and jointly controlled entities. So, last but not the least is the chapter 16, the non-profit organization. So, ang in-include ko lang po dito is yung non-profit organization carry out socially desirable needs of making profit. So, the NPOs can be classified into the following. Number 1 is healthcare organization, private non-profit college and universities, voluntary health and welfare organization, and number 4 is other non-profit organization. So, at kabilang din dito yung mga accounting principles under US GAAP na super haba. So, Yun lang po yung report ko sa GovAcc, and thank you for listening, and thank you for the opportunity to make my grades higher. Thank you po.